I chose to do the case study on student athlete use of social media and what can be done to help student athletes use social media and be more responsible with their use. And going over some of the examples they brought up, Johnny Manziel and his some of his tweets that he put out when he was in college, still Texas A&M, talking about he couldn't wait to leave. Cardell Jones as well at Ohio State, talking about he didn't see the point of going to school because he went to school for football, and just finding ways how we can stop this kind of use of social media as a student athlete and what can be done to better prepare student athletes for proper use of social media. Overall summary, again, just going over some of the things that student athletes have said, like the two examples I brought up. Um, it's really important, especially with social media not going anywhere anytime soon. It's going to continue to grow. Um, it's something that is it's definitely just going to get bigger, and seeing that uh, there are more and more social media platforms out there, and there's more opportunities for student athletes to uh, endanger themselves and the universities that they go to. And it's really key that teams and universities get ahead of this and train student athletes on how to use it without necessarily banning them from using certain platforms. And I think it's really necessary to find some kind of effective training methods and getting an understanding of what student athletes do, what platforms they use, and uh, what what would be necessary to help them use social media more responsibly. Uh, Again, the problem is how can we better prepare student athletes to be more responsible with their social media use while they're in college? Action plan, study what other teams have done in the past, just to see what has and hasn't worked, and especially going forward and knowing what can be done uh, to better set up student athletes for their social media use. Um, Again, seeing what hasn't worked in the past, and then maybe even working within their conference, seeing what those teams have done, and then another thing would be establish a university-wide policy for social media use for student athletes. It's somewhat unfair because the general student population wouldn't have to worry about something like this, but the general student population also isn't representing the university as often as student athletes are. So, uh, establishing some kind of rules would be vital for setting up any kind of training, I think, before we even get into that part of creating a system that works and is beneficial for everybody involved. Again, got to implement this. Implementing the system is another key action plan that needs to be taken part. Is probably the biggest one. Is most obvious one that must be done. And then, upon reading the case study, a lot of the student athletes said that one, they said that they need some kind of training, but two, uh, they said the biggest downfall, I guess you could say, of whatever plan had been put in place was there wasn't really much of a follow up. There wasn't there wasn't coaches or administrators that were continually following up with social media use and social media training. So having a plan of following up, maybe not every day or every month or week or whatever, but so much so that it's always on the minds of student athletes, given a lot of things that they have to do. It's also important to make